network as much as you can. And then once you find like a niche that you're going to be good at, or you want to like really dedicate yourself, you've got to put in the work. And then with those two combined, you could almost, do anything.
Hey, this is Andy with the Amazing Freedom Podcast. Super excited today to be talking to a friend of mine that I met probably 4 years ago. I believe it was at a amazing conference. You guys, you're really in for a treat. This man travels worldwide, all over in many countries. And I really want to make this episode The Adventures of Bradley Sutton. So if you don't know Bradley, go to LinkedIn, go to Facebook, go to Helium 10 Facebook group. You want to follow him. I'm amazed, Bradley, at the adventures that you have gone on since you've came on to Helium 10 and just follow you around. One of my favorite is when you go to Pakistan and you go in and literally there's like hundreds and thousands of people that are just like pressing and crowding in upon you. So hopefully we can get into that a little bit. But Bradley, if you would just share with us a little bit your story. I know when I met you, I think that you were working with a supplement company and you were kind of running their e-commerce wing of it. And it was a really large one that if we named it, probably everybody would know because they have television commercials. So how did you get into the e-commerce space?
Well, e-commerce, I actually started early on, like in maybe 90, I want to say 98 around there.
Man, you are an OG.
Yeah, OG. Like I was like, I don't know what I was like 20 or around there. Yeah, 98. I was about 20 years old. That was right around the time the Fast and the Furious movies came out, and the very first one. And I was really into that thing. And I've always tried to march to the beat of a different drummer. So in those days, everybody wanted to like soup up their Hondas and Toyotas and, mainly Japanese cars, right? So I'm like, I always have to be different with everything I do. So I'm like, I'm going to go Korean. And in those days, Hyundai and Kia, they didn't really have that greater reputation that they do now. So it's kind of weird. So but I got myself a Hyundai and I was like, oh shoot, nobody makes parts for, I want to put my, carbon fiber spoilers and exhaust and like I see in Fast and Furious, but nobody has it. So I went looking in Korea at that time, these are Korean cars. That was where those were the Honda, Hyundai and Kia was the Honda and Toyota of Korea. So there was plenty of companies. And I saw one company who was trying to market to America, but everything had to be shipped from Korea. It would take like 2 months. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to start buying stuff for my car from this guy. But I'm like, I see an opportunity here. I'm like, dude, like you need some help in distribution. Like, why don't I open up a warehouse for you and let me run your US operations? And the guy was like, okay, cool. So it was a .com business, and I just started a warehouse, and we scaled that up to like $1 million company, like pretty fast. And that was like my first e-commerce, because 100% of our sales were all from .com.
And how old were you at the time you were doing this?
I was about 20. Yeah, I was just about 20. It was my first kind of like almost real job. I was doing like volunteering and like, religious work and stuff back in those days. And so like I never had like even a real job. And around that time I had just started, like I was like a secretary, like for random thing. I was for the corporate headquarters of Hot Dog on a Stick. You guys have any hot dog on a stick in the malls near you at all?
I don't think
seen that
so.
chain? People wear these crazy uniforms. It's just kind of like a McDonald's, but kind of a niche chain. And so then, I was like, this is not exactly what I want to do, being a secretary for the rest of my life. So I was like, look, I had never done really entrepreneurial things. So that was my first, kind of like job in the entrepreneurial e-commerce space.
Yeah, but so you were ahead of the game though. So like you understood, okay, hey, look, this e-commerce thing, like I think we can mail these to people.
Yeah.
Because you were probably doing eBay then, right?
Yeah, we were doing eBay. There was no Amazon back then, obviously. Or I mean, there might have been Amazon for books, like call it textbooks and stuff. But we were doing eBay and then just I don't think Shopify was a thing back then. So it was just like we programmed our own website, using what were some of those old like HTML editing softwares? The names escape me, but Dreamweaver. Yeah, we used to use Dreamweaver to like code our website and stuff. And yeah, those are the days.
Wow. So then you're figuring out e-commerce. You start this website, working with these car parts, and then what do you get into?
Yeah, so we did that, for a while. Then, there's a big recession in America, and then when there's a recession, people don't have money for nonsense things for their cars. So that business kind of went away a little bit. But I always like maintained contact with a lot of the Korean companies that I had made contact with, through this business, and we maintained a, kind of professional relationship. And then I was dabbling in different things, working for the man and things like that, which I really didn't like doing.
Yep.
But then later on, like about 10 years later after the car parts thing, they're like, hey, we got this new thing, phone cases. Like we have some great manufacturers here in Korea. And now that was around the time that Samsung and LG were really hitting America hard, like with the Galaxy. It was the first time Galaxy phones came to America, and the Galaxy Note phone, and then iPhones were becoming more of a thing. And so we started, they didn't know what they were doing, but they were like, hey, let's try and put this on Amazon. This was like in 2014. They just kind of lucked into it. It was ridiculous. Like in the early days, they were selling thousands of units a day of phone cases. You know how small phone cases are. They were importing these things by 40-foot containers. You can imagine how many phone cases fit in a 40-foot container. And it was just complete kind of like luck though, because they were one of the first ones to kind of like push them on Amazon. And they're the first company to kind of ever use like 3D imagery for main images. Now it became a thing. So I didn't know anything about Amazon in those days, like 2014, 2015. Like I was just kind of like the money man. Like since I was the only American, everything was in my name, and I had a warehouse. And so that was like my contribution to the company was the logistics and having my name on everything. And it was crazy. I even moved my whole family back with my parents because the property I had at the time, which now I live back here now, we have a 2,000 square foot warehouse in the back. And so what we did was I moved my whole family back in with my parents, and then we converted the whole house into an office for this company, and then the warehouse in the backs. But again, I knew how to put FBA stickers.
Now, is that the one you built a full court basketball court in?
Yes. So back then, me and my weirdness in that area during the time we were running this Amazon business here, I almost made like a mini farm. Like I live in California. I don't live in like, farm country. This is the suburbs of San Diego. But I was one of the few. I had pigs and goats and dogs. I always like being weird. And so so we got rid of all those animals. And so I was like, okay, now we have a basketball court back there.
It's funny because, when I first met you, you reminded me a little bit about myself. So I go to see a counselor every now and then. My counselor says, Andy, you're a high stimulus person. Like you like a lot of stimulus. And when I think of you, I think of the same thing.
Yeah.
You did Zumba for a while. So you were in content creation before the name or the term content creation probably even existed. And, I imagine you probably were juggling a number of things. So talk to us a little bit, because I want to talk about content creation. That's what you do right now for Helium 10. You do an amazing job at it. As soon as Man and Guy made you their hire, I mean, I know that Helium 10 was blowing up. I said, oh my goodness, they are going to explode now, because your charisma, your communication skills, I think are at the top in the Amazon space. And I'm in it. And just because you attract people to yourself and you're good at what you do, like you have an extreme talent at that. But so the content creation piece, so that started your ability of where you're at now, I think was, I'm sure, just like anything, like you've mastered and you put a ton of hours in with Zumba. And so I have a friend here in Hershey, Pennsylvania, who followed you from your early days in Zumba. Talk about, content creation then. And I know you have some videos that have millions of views.
Yeah, that was, I've taken some principles, from that too. Even applied it to what I do in Amazon. But originally, again, like I said, I marched to the beat of a different drummer. So I was trying to lose weight back then. I used to be a sumo wrestler, which is unique in itself. And then when I was like, I need to lose weight, the doctor said, I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do at the gym? And I was like, this is boring. In those days, Zumba wasn't like as much of a, household word as it is nowadays. Everybody knows what you mean when you say Zumba. But 10 years ago, it wasn't a thing. And I was like, what is this on the gym schedule? I like went in there. I'm like, wow, they're playing good music. I was like, this is like so much fun. This dance, it doesn't even feel like I'm working out. So I was like, let's do this. And then I had never taken a dance class in my life or anything. I wasn't a dancer. I'm not like 2 left feet. I can hold a rhythm, whatever, but I was never a professional dancer. But then I never went into it thinking I was going to start teaching it. But I went to go get certified because I wanted to go to this thing that they had, the Zumba convention. Where there's going to be like 10,000 Zumba instructors all partying for a week. I was like, how do I go there? They're like, oh, you got to be a certified Zumba instructor. So I'm like, all right, fine, I'll go get certified. But then people were like, hey, you should teach. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll start teaching. I was like, I wanted to like record some videos just so I can remember my routines because I don't have a good memory. So I was like, I want to record it, and maybe some of my students, at 24 Hour Fitness, they might want to do it on their own time. And I was like, I learned a lot of routines and stuff from watching other people on YouTube. But then I was like, wait a minute, this could actually be a thing, And then I was thinking about it, I was like, all these people that I watched on YouTube, if I saw them at the Zumba convention, like I wouldn't even know who they are. I love what they do on YouTube, but they weren't memorable. I wouldn't even remember their name. I'm like, people aren't gonna remember Bradley. So I was like, let me create a character that's gonna be kind of memorable. And so that's where I created this character called Crazy Sock TV. And it was this idea I had where I put like some ridiculous colored sock. I cut off the top of a sock and I put it on my one arm. And then the other sock was on the other leg. And then the other leg had nothing. And the other arm had nothing. It's just wild. Like this, 6'3", 200 pounder with these rainbow colored socks and crazy colored socks. And then, then sure enough, people remembered that, they didn't remember Bradley, but they're like, whenever they would see me at a Zumba conference, oh, that's the crazy sock guy, or that's the crazy sock guy.
That's what my friend said.
the crazy sock guy. And then the other kind of like thing was like, like I said, I wasn't a dancer. All the people on YouTube and all the other famous Zumba instructors, they're all like came from dance backgrounds and they were incredible. But then when I would go to a master class of one of them, I would be like, you know what, this is great to look at, but I don't relate to that person because like some of the moves they do, like I can never do that.
Right.
I'm not professionally trained. I can't do that. But I'm still going to go to the master class because I love watching this. It's a spectacle, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, I was so popular here locally because every student in there, like I gave this vibe of like Joe anybody,
Yes.
like this guy is like, I would tell my story. I'm like, this guy, was an ex-sumo wrestler who's never taken dance class. So the vibe that I would give people was like, if this fool can do it, like I can. And that sometimes is more inspiring than seeing somebody who's just like amazing. It's inspiring in a different way. So I was like, so that was like kind of like the success. Like I would make people mad who were like professional Zumba instructor, like the real, they're like, what is this guy who's not even like professional? Like, how is he more popular than us and stuff? I'm like, guys, it's about being relatable sometimes. It's not about how much skill you have. And so that's like kind of like one of the things that I brought to like my, the podcast when I started. I'd never done podcasts before Helium 10 and stuff, but like, I don't want to be just some like, professional sounding and the best amazing hacks. There's definitely a space for that. We all love listening to the Kevin Kings of the world and stuff. It's amazing. But then I want to just be like that Joe everybody guy. I'm not going to cut out my, I stutter sometimes and I forget things, sometimes, but I want that to come out in what I do in the podcast and how I do my presentations and stuff. And I'm hoping that these are people or people out there will be like, hey, you know what? I relate, Bradley can do it. He's not even that special. Like he's just a regular guy like us. And then I'll try and connect with people on that level a little bit more. So it's like, how can Zumba relate to e-commerce? Well, there's one way.
That's awesome. But, I think what you're saying there too is authenticity. And I know, you recently at your Helium 10 conference, Sell and Scale, you had Gary V there, for me and for a lot of us, in digital commerce or digital space, we listen to what he says. And he says one of the number one things is you have to be authentic,
Absolutely.
And if you can start with authenticity of whatever you're passionate about, then that message is going to come through a lot clearer.
100%.
And you're going to kind of surround your tribe with that. So then you learn that kind of authenticity. And if you're into Zumba or you want to see some of Bradley's, just go to YouTube, type in Crazy Sock TV. You'll see some of his early videos. But what I love about that too, being in the e-commerce space, I mean, for us, like in the brand that we're growing now, that's where we start. Even before, like, we may be looking at a product, but the first place we start is what kind of content, what kind of education or entertainment can we put out there to begin to build a fan base that could be potential customers for this product. Like content creation is so integral to even before we begin to launch a brand right now, which is why I think, for you getting into that content, and I bet did you ever have any products around Zumba?
No, I mean,
if you knew back then what you know now,
I didn't monetize my channel. What I did in those days is like equivalent to like maybe 300 million views on YouTube and like 300,000. Like I was so dumb in those days. And then of course I learned Amazon, later. But there was so much I could have done. But about talking about Gary Vee, and I know you weren't there, but on this last day, he was talking specifically to Amazon sellers, and he said something interesting. It was kind of shocking to a lot of people. He's like, how many people in the room here are like gross sales of 5 million or more a year? Yep. He's like, you guys need to be, I forgot what the exact number he said. I think he said 50. You guys need to be putting out 50 pieces of content a day. And I think people thought that at first they misheard it. But he's like, people, maybe Amazon sellers don't think that they, need to create content. And it's not necessarily, advertising content, but 50 is actually not that hard to do, between Instagram stories, you repurpose the stuff, like one piece of content.
Yep.
Like you could have that could equal 15, chunks that you could do. I'm going to make this an Instagram reel. I'm going to make this a Snapchat, because he says, you just got to get your brand out there, and you never know what's going to go viral. You shouldn't post stuff to try and go viral. Yep. But he's like, man, you guys as Amazon sellers and brand builders, that's the probably number one thing you guys are leaving out there is you think, content creation and doing this is for like other niches or, other markets or something. No, you as brand builders, you have got to get, brand recognition out there, and that's going to be king. And so I think a lot of, me personally, I was like, wow, that's deep. Like 50 pieces a day, like that's crazy.
Yeah, I agree with it. And again, I think the rise of Helium 10 is in direct correlation to when they brought you on. And
I don't know about that.
Listen, you started putting content out there. And I know for us and our brand, and again, talking and listening to people like Gary Vee, similar to, like what Mr. Beast has done on YouTube, he's absolutely crushing it with his products, but it's all built on the content that he's put out. And Mr. Beast, right, is going to be a multi-billionaire, and he will compete with major brands, whether that's Coca-Cola. I know some influencers on YouTube already. They have beverages, right, in the beverage space. How did they do it? They did it by building their content. And so when I see your title at Helium 10, Chief Evangelist, right? What is that? That is creating content and getting the message out there that Helium 10 has the best tool that you need as an Amazon seller. And how are people going to find out? The only way they find out, right, is through content creation.
Yeah, that part is definitely true. It's multi-purpose. It serves as training. Like how can people need to know, or how can people get the benefit of Helium 10 if they don't know how to use it? It's for getting brand awareness. It's for community building. You look at the difference of how we rose so fast, and others maybe just kind of fell away or stayed stagnant. One of the big differences, like as far as a tool wise, it's not like, oh, our engineers are. I pick our engineers over anybody, but it's not like, in real talk, it's not like, oh, we have engineers with special knowledge that other tool companies didn't have. But if you look at the one difference, it was like our community and content are key, and people appreciate that. That they want. There was another company out there who was way bigger than us.
Yep.
And they were big with community before, and like their founder was right there front and center. Then all of a sudden you notice that he wasn't out there as much anymore. We had to go through that. Manny Coates was front and center of our company. But he's like, wait a minute, I can't really grow this company if I'm just doing training videos and meetups and all this stuff all the time. I got to step away. But instead of just stepping away and now there's nobody to fill that void, that was where I kind of came in. And you can almost like see the difference there, where it was like we wanted to make sure our community understood that they're important to us and have as many touch points as possible.
Yep.
Some of the other companies didn't do that, and you could see some of them fell off. So I think community is important, not just in the software space, but just if you're running an agency or even if you're just building your brand, just don't forget about the community, and they'll show you love.
Absolutely. So, again, if you're listening to this podcast and you have your own brand, you're building your brand, one of the things that we just recently did over the last 5 months is we've been doing social all along. So our Instagram is probably our best social. We have a decent amount of following, about 20,000 followers. We have a lot of user generated content. So we are constantly reaching out to other influencers, asking them to try our product. They're giving us videos, which are really good. But we really felt like we had to do almost what Helium 10, when they brought you on, like we have to make some hires of folks who are experts in the different areas of our products. And they really need to start producing some educational content, some entertainment content. So we actually hired 3 people. We sell kind of in 3 different niches. And that's really what we're putting a lot of our time and a lot of our energy into, is helping them and allowing them to kind of create their own educational content on their channel, because we believe the long-term play, again, is that you build that brand equity through authentic content with people that believe in the product and can really teach and help others.
For sure.
And I see that, like what you were able to do with Helium 10, what you continue to do with Helium 10, as the exact same play. So help us understand, again, we see you traveling all over. So let us in just a little bit, if you can, like what are you doing when you're going to all these countries?
Yeah. Well, first of all, shameless plug to the podcast, but guys, look up, Serious Sellers Podcast. And just recently, I'll give you guys a number. As a matter of fact, I did a travel hacks episode. So I got to make it clear, because otherwise, people at Helium 10, other employees might get a little bit wondering, like, is Bradley expensing trips to the Maldives and to Pakistan? All this? No, almost all of these weird trips that you see me doing, like, I'm paying this out of my own pocket. But in this episode, okay, 375. So it's 375, guys. Look up Serious Sellers Podcast episode 375. I talk about how I pretty much don't pay for any of this. Like, I just use credit card points. You Amazon sellers out there, guys, you shouldn't be paying for any of your flights. If you're a big seller, it should almost be 100% points just with PPC, spend alone, let alone other things. But when I go places, I have as a travel nerd, I have twofold reasons why I travel to places. It's like, yes, I try and do business stuff. I go to Pakistan and of course I'm doing presentations and things, but I always want to look at what's going on locally. So every time I go to a new place, and I'm about to hit up 4 new countries next month, I including Vietnam. I've never been to Vietnam before. Man. Speaking at an event in Singapore, Vietnam, and then I'm also going to Korea and Japan. But I have a list of stuff I do. Number one is I look up this app called TripAdvisor. And then there's this thing called top things to do. And it's voted on by, tens of hundreds of thousands of people.
Yep.
And then I look where I'm going to go for, a conference or for whatever. And I was like, how many of the top 10 things in the entire country are near me? And can I, cross off the bucket list, and like, usually there's always stuff. Is, when you fly into an airport, you're usually flying into the main city. So guarantee there's like, a cool museum or a cool, amazing experience to do. So I always do that. And then the other thing is I try and like, go to the top restaurant. In America, it's easy. Like, there's something that a lot of people don't realize. They know about Yelp, but there's a top 100 list that comes out every year for Yelp. So just type in Yelp top 100 for 2022 or whatever. And then if I'm going to go travel to a city like Orlando or wherever, I'm going to see if there are any restaurants that made it near. And so like every time I go somewhere, I'm going to literally one of the top 100 restaurants in the United States. And it's just, I'm a foodie like that. So
right.
Guys, as entrepreneurs, sometimes we get too focused on the business side of things, and then we forget about the pleasure sides. And yeah, you got to be focused on business. But when you travel, guys, it's you don't have to be a travel nerd like me to like appreciate this stuff. It's amazing when you dive into the history of another country or their culture or their food. So whenever you travel, try and do some of those things, even if it is a business trip, and it just makes the trips a lot more meaningful.
Oh, that's awesome. I alluded a little earlier to videos I watched when you were in Pakistan. Help us understand a little bit about what's going on there, because literally it looked like it was almost like they had some hero worship, going on. Well, which is it looks like that. Awesome.
But here's the thing: the reason why it looks like that is because out of all the 40 plus countries I've been to in my life, that is the number one hospitality country I think I've ever been to. No disrespect to any other country, but America is one of the least hospitable places. I would say so. Most times I travel, like I'm like, wow, the hospitality here is great, which is true, but they're just like on another level. Like I arrived at the airport, like at 3 a.m. one day. I was like, okay, maybe a couple people will come to pick me up. There's like 20 people there at 3 a.m. They had dancing horses they had prepared for me. I was like, I've never even seen dancing horses. They put like lays that were made with money. Like around, like as soon as I got off the air, I was like, what in the world is happening? This is 3 a.m. But they just, they're just number one. They're super hospitable country, and they're very passionate about e-commerce. It's something new, to them, like a lot, for years and years, kind of like go-to places for getting help, with your business might be, India or Philippines, and those countries will always stay, near the top there. But it's been in the last few years, like there's been these companies like the enablers where they partner up with the government of Pakistan, who's trying to like kind of like help the country like come up in the world, and so they're helping companies like that. And then the group that I visit, they have like 1.3 million Facebook group members, and they're just super like the passion that they have to learn about e-commerce and especially Amazon and to get jobs in it is just like that's what's really driving them. So when you combine that level of hospitality with their passion for e-commerce, then yeah, it looks like I'm a member of BTS or something when I go there. But plus it's kind of rare. It was kind of rare because like that's not, like it's tough for an American to go to Pakistan. Like, I probably got denied my visa like 3 times.
Right.
So it is weird. Like, but anybody out there, if you guys ever have a chance to go to Pakistan, it's in my opinion safe. Like any country has, America has cut parts of the cities. You probably shouldn't go over there, late at night or something. So of course, there might be some bad areas of Pakistan, but like the major cities, I felt completely safe and hospitality was next level.
That's awesome. So again, if you want to hear his travel hacks, go to Serious Sellers Podcast, episode 375, and you can hear some of those travel hacks. I'm actually going to go listen to it because unfortunately, I don't do a very good job on using the points from my credit cards. I know I could do a lot better job at that. So Bradley, tell us a little bit now. We have about a minute left here.
Okay.
The question that I often ask people is more important what you know, or is it more important who you know? I feel like at this point, I could be wrong. The amazing job that you've done at Helium 10, I feel like you could almost write your ticket. I often tell my partner, if our business ever gets to the level, we'll do about 11 million this year. If we ever get to the level though, where we, hit that 30 million mark, I am definitely going to make an offer to you for some position in my company and try to make it as sweet as possible. I know that we have to get at that level, probably for the level that you're at right now. But talk to us, if you would, just in the last minute on, possibly, the people that you've met in your life that kind of have helped you. Do you see that in your life? Like the people that that, have helped you kind of get where you're at?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's kind of like a chicken egg thing. Like if you were to say, hey, is it going to be all what you know or all who you know? Like I would say it's, you can't have one without the other, but there is one that definitely comes first. And I think it's the who you know. Like if I trace my journey, back, like even, getting in with the, Korean companies, it wasn't because I came in with some amazing knowledge of Korean companies. It was because it was who I knew. It was my network. It's cliche, but your network is your net worth, right? You and I met, before I even was anything, at Helium 10 was who I know. I met Manny Coates, just randomly at a conference, and then he saw what I was posting in Facebook, and that's how he went out and tried to recruit me and stuff. So like but who you know can only get you so far. If you don't have the drive and determination to like make yourself a student of the game and to become an expert in something, your network is not going to get you very far. So you've got to first know the right people. And then you do that through conferences and putting yourself out there and meeting people and getting Andy to pay for your meal at Bahama Breeze. Like that was the first, I think, meal we had together. But network as much as you can. And then once you find like a niche that you're going to be good at, or you want to like really dedicate yourself, you've got to put in the work. And then with those two combined, you could almost, do anything.
Awesome. Well, hey, Bradley, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, it's Bradley Sutton. He is the Chief Evangelist, Director of Training at Helium 10. Check out his podcast. It's called the Serious Seller Podcast. I think it is the premier podcast in the Amazon space. If you are in Amazon, the physical inventory business selling on Amazon, you want to listen to his podcast. And we use Helium 10 religiously. So I just want to thank you and your team for putting together an amazing tool that helps us make really good, informed decisions when we're purchasing potential products. So there's not a day that goes by that we don't log in and use Helium 10. And by the way, I love your app. So now instead of going to my Amazon seller app, I go to the Helium 10 app. It's prettier, and I like the way things are laid out. So a phenomenal software. And I just want to congratulate you again on your success. You just do a tremendous job.
Thank you
and
so
I
much.
love your title. I often call myself the Amazon evangelist. And I love that you chose that title as the Chief Evangelist for Helium 10.
Yeah, I credit to Manny Coates. I didn't know, but I was like, they first told me that. I was like, what in the world am I going to be spreading the gospel about, Helium 10, like evangelist?
Right.
But it was actually a term. I think one of the first main ones was, I forgot, Kawasaki from Apple was like one of the first chief evangelists. And that was, but when they explained the term to me, I was like, you know what? That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing as Amazon sellers too. You got to evangelize your brand out there.
That's right. Awesome. Well, I'm going to let you go. So Bradley had like 11 p.m. podcast last night. He had a 6 a.m. and then he joined me for this one, which is 2 p.m. Eastern. So he's all over the place. Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And just really celebrate and cheer on your continued success there at Helium 10.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Bradley. All right. Thank you. Take care.